With the authority of the Council, I shall now confer the degree of Doctor of the University. I call upon the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Roy Webb, to make this presentation.
Chancellor, the Council of the University has resolved to award the degree of Doctor of the University to Mr Alex Freeleagus, AO CBE. Alexander Christie Freeleagus, the only son of Christie and Ariadne, was born in Brisbane 70 years ago. Both his parents had migrated to Australia from Greece. His father, Christie, had arrived just before Federation and would proudly proclaim that he was a Foundation member. Alex, while still a student at the University of Queensland, experienced two events which, together with his first love, the law, were to shape his future. The first was that in 1951 he became Vice-Consul to his father, Christie, who had been Honorary Consul General for Greece since 1919 and who was Dean of the Consulate Corps. Secondly, he was to join the Queensland University Regiment at the time of its post-war formation, later transferring to the Queensland University Air Squadron. Very shortly after his admission as a solicitor in late 1953, he joined the respected legal firm of Henderson and Ley, later Clayton Utz, becoming a partner at the beginning of 1955, and where he has since remained in continuous legal practice. In 1994, he retired as the firm's senior partner, having held that position for 23 years, and is now its senior consultant. He is a senior counsellor of the Queensland Law Society. He has been at the cutting edge of the extraordinary changes that have taken place in the Queensland legal scene over many decades, specialising in oil and gas law, aviation, and international business law. Following his graduation in Arts and Law from the University of Queensland, he was concerned at the almost total lack of postgraduate professional training for solicitors. He took an active role within the Queensland Law Society, advocating postgraduate training, and was appointed to a committee formed in 1959 to inaugurate these activities. He left that committee 21 years later, and for many years was its chairman. Helen Gregory, in her history of the Queensland Law Society, described him as father of the annual Law Society Symposium. On the death of his father in 1957, Alex Freeleagus assumed the role of Honorary Consul for Greece in Queensland, which today he still carries on as Consul General, making him not only Queensland's but Australia's longest-serving Honorary Consul. He has been twice Dean of the Consulate Corps. From the very outset, he regarded the formal side of consular service as secondary to its people aspects, being deeply aware of his Hellenic heritage and of the migrant experience through his parents, his prime aim has been to help migrants and their children strike an appropriate balance between their inherited culture and that of full participation as citizens in the everyday life of Australia, something he believed right from his teenage days could productively and rewardingly be achieved. He saw this search for cultural balance and harmony, by whatever name, to be of fundamental importance and always as a two-way street. As well as looking always after the interest of his people, he initiated and oversaw much of the Greek community's outward-looking cultural activities, such as the early Greek Expos, and especially Greece's participation in World Expo 88, for which he was Commissioner General. Believing in leading by example, he involved himself in all manner of wider community activities in Queensland and nationally, including the National Fitness Council, the Federal Government's National Council of Population and Ethnic Affairs, the Queensland Committee of the Australian Bicentennial Authority, and as Chief of Team Attaches in the Brisbane Commonwealth Games. He was founding chairman of the Queensland branch of the Order of Australia Association and its national vice president. In 1991, he was founding chairman of the Brisbane, now the Queensland, Biennial Festival of Music. However, it was in his 40-year participation in the Citizen and Reserve Forces that he saw his greatest personal expression of his feelings for Australia and his appreciation for all that it has done for newcomers from all parts of the globe, and especially his faith in the society which has thus evolved. He served in a variety of roles in the Royal Australian Air Force, initially as a University Squadron Cadet, and then in the City of Brisbane Squadron as its intelligence officer, and later as a member of the Legal Reserve. In this role, he served briefly in Vietnam in 1968. He retired with the rank of Wing Commander in 1988. He later became the chair of the fund which established the RAAF Memorial in Brisbane. His love of flying also continued, and he covered the length and breadth of the continent in his little blue and white Grumman. He put into effect his belief that lawyers should have a hands-on participation in commercial as well as community life, and has served on a number of government and public company boards. He has the rare distinction of being awarded the Order of Australia in both its General Division as an officer, AO, and its Military Division as a member, AM. He is Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, holds the Queen's Jubilee Medal, and has been awarded the Reserve Forces Decoration, the Air Efficiency Award, the Australian Active Service Medal, and the Vietnam Support Medal. He holds the Silver Cross Royal of the Order of George I of Greece, the Gold Cross of the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, and the Gold Cross of the Patriarchate of Constantinople. It is especially fitting that the Council of Griffith University should honour Alexander Freeleagus in recognition of his distinguished services to the community. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure that I present to you Alexander Freeleagus for admission to the degree of Doctor of the University.
I now call upon Mr. Alex Freeleagus, AO, CBE, Doctor of the University, to deliver the occasional address.
Long ago, when William Shakespeare brought onto a stage all the world, you who have graduated upon it this night will, I believe, do quite the converse, for you will take this stage out to the world. To what effect? It's up to you. Before coming here, you have spent all these years, seemingly most of your lifetime, as your radiantly and justifiably proud families can attest, accepting intellectual discipline, learning distilled from across time and from so much human experience. And here tonight is the climax of it all. In sharp focus are your chosen and diverse fields within engineering, science, information and computer technology, the law, and even aviation. And now, you carry in your hand a certification from this fine university for all to see, which you are ready and qualified in the fields of your degree to practice your chosen profession. I believed this too, some 45 years ago, but not for long. For, given my first office, and full of bravado, I put my degrees up on the wall. Sometime later, I was moved to another. This time, the wall remained bare. And when I was asked, "Where are your degrees?" I replied, "Do I have to show the world my learner's licence?" For during this time, I had found out that this is little of what they were, because instead of just being able to roll off answers to every problem presented to me, I soon learnt that professional life wasn't going to be quite that easy. In fact, most of my first night in practice was spent in a SWAT-back situation. For the very first and complex problem presented to me on that day was one that wasn't covered at all in the course. That great lawgiver, Murphy, was right again. And while in other areas the legal principles and the relevant cases came quite readily to my mind, solutions, not quite so, for the issues were far more complex than I had imagined. The facts, the surrounding circumstances, and most of all, the reaction of people to them were often as immediately and readily identifiable as worms in a can. And that's when the challenge of applying, of adapting my training, in short, the challenge of making the law work, began, and still to this day has not worn off. And for you too, may it long be so. Though you have run the whole gamut of assessments, tests, exams, not all of these will quite equate to what will happen to you in practice. For everything, and I repeat, everything you do, will be tested to the limit, not in a simulated environment, but as it actually affects the lives and fortunes of those who rely on and who are affected by your advice. Much of what I say tonight is to our so fortunate first-timers, but to you who have been here before and are now back as you ascend the steps of higher learning, may I say that you and the medalists are as beacons along the road of excellence. And by your attainments, especially in research, you expand our national, even international horizons. This university enshrines the name of one such. For Sir Samuel Walker Griffith was, in today's parlance, one of Queensland's, one of Australia's all-time greats. Not only as a jurist, but as a statesman also. For on these very days, a century ago, as a founding father, he was playing a seminal role in crafting this incomparable Commonwealth of ours. And after Federation, as the first Chief Justice of the High Court, he set about making many of its new laws work. the Chancellor will readily recall our much-loved Law Dean at UQ, Professor Walter Harrison. He was an authority on Sir Samuel Griffith, and after quite an exposition on one of his landmark judgments, he concluded by saying, and with all this, he was a bottle of whiskey a day man. And so, this university is more than confident as it awards you these degrees that you have the qualities, the capacities needed to surmount the challenges of which I have spoken. And so too am I, provided that you remain always aware that there is still more to learn, that you be conscious that your advice, your planned course of action should be ever so much more than a well-educated guess, and that you leave no stone unturned, no means of checking, of verifying, left undone. But above all, whatever the stresses and pressures upon you, time, cost effectiveness, so many others, do not ever compromise your professional, your personal integrity, for it is beyond price. Would that tonight I was one of you to share again the great adventure that lies ahead.